Hey, what's up? I'm Channel Pup, fanboy supervillain. Gamescom has officially begun, and Sega and Sonic Team are hitting that early bird special with the Sonic X Shadow Generations hype as we have a brand new trailer. We'll be discussing the details of the trailer in this video as well as things you might have missed. There'll be some speculation, and we'll also be discussing things like the special edition of the game and recent press releases. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you do want to support me further, you're feeling extra generous, my link to my Patreon is in the description below. It is all super appreciated. Thank you. So I kind of want to just break this down into segments so I'm not just basically commentating over the trailer. So we're going to start off with the hub world, which is something we knew about, we saw images of, but we never saw it in action until now. Shadow Generations features an evolution of the white world from Sonic Generations, but now it's got kind of an open zone twist to it. It is inspired by the levels of Sonic Frontiers. And yeah, we finally get some footage of that, which looks kind of like Soliana Castletown meets White World with some Spider-Man No Way Home-esque sky effects. And while that is the general theme of the White World, we do at the same time, like the original Sonic Generations, have stage gates that have kind of the decor of the stage that they represent. As we can see in the background of this shot here, we've got the Space Colony arc with the big 3D text like we had in Sonic Generations as well. We've got some of that continuity between the two stories of Sonic X Shadow Generations. Which also means that there's going to be some nice visual variation to this hub world, which is something that the open zones in Sonic Frontiers were sorely lacking. We know that there's going to be different NPCs around this hub world that you can speak to, and while we're not seeing any giant Guardian boss fights like that of Sonic Frontiers, we do know that there are enemies populating this hub world as Shadow chucks one of the black arms through this tower, revealing a hidden area. So we're already seeing that there's some destructible scenery with some new goodies to find, which is super exciting to me. I love having little hidden areas to these places. Yeah, this hub world looks so much better than the open zones from Sonic Frontiers. I doubt it's going to be anywhere near as big, but it's not just a load of empty terrain with platforms and rails floating in the air this time. It looks like a little town, but Sonic stage elements appear to be much better integrated into the overall appearance of the stage. This looks like a platformer stage taking on an open format rather than an open environment that's been littered with Sonic level assets. Now, I know I'm harping on Sonic Frontiers quite a lot here, but it really is the best point of reference here, as in the press release for Sonic X Shadow Generations, it did mention that this hub world was inspired by Sonic Frontiers' open zones. And what we're seeing here is kind of the evolution of that in a sense. Also, don't get me wrong, if you're new here, I do adore Sonic Frontiers. It is my favorite Sonic game. I just don't think the open zones had a huge deal of thought put into how they were presented, and with this, we're seeing a lot of improvements, a lot of the changes that I wanted to see. I think things like floating platforms and rails are helped by A, they do look in theme with the environment this time as opposed to just being metal, but B, this hub environment here is built up a lot higher. They built upwards, so you've got more kind of like towers and buildings and stuff like that, which, you know, it can kind of hide stuff that's floating in the air a lot better. We've even got more color variation here as well, which is funny considering this is the white world. There's also these massive open water areas which Shadow can surf along with some obstacles along the way. Now, I would be super impressed if upon failing this part of the gameplay, rather than just immediately drowning, there's a little underwater area, but we'll see. Definite bonus points if they do that. Immediately, with this element alone, Shadow's White World is much more dangerous than Sonic's, with a ton more to discover. Also, is that a loot chest over there? Now then, speaking of improvements from Sonic Frontiers, one of the things I said that I really hoped would change from Frontiers was the draw distance and pop-in. That was one of the most egregious parts of Sonic Frontiers because it made it impossible to get properly immersed into the visuals. It may not ruin the game, but it does matter, and I will argue that until the cows come home. Now, obviously, like the later Sonic Frontiers trailers, this is carefully curated. They don't want to show off any of these weak spots. So for a couple of fleeting seconds of footage, I slowed it right down to 0.25 speed and found this crate here pops in, and there's an enemy outside the Space Colony arc that pops in. Now, that may seem minuscule, but if that pops in, what else pops in? Fortunately, though, if this is anything to go by, it's nowhere near as in-your-face as it was in Sonic Frontiers. I had to look for this, but it is there. But if it is just tiny things way off in the distance, that in itself is enough of an improvement for me. And I mean, that's nothing exceptionally bad. A lot of games will have things like just tiny little objects popping in here and there. The thing with Sonic Frontiers that made it so egregious was that lights and shadows were constantly popping in. Objects that were barely at any kind of distance were popping in. And then, for the Final Horizon DLC, we had to chart courses for platforming challenges that hadn't popped in yet. Like, Sonic Frontiers was exceptionally bad in terms of that, and I need to see improvement in this area. I don't doubt there will be, because they've clearly put a lot of thought into the presentation of this one when compared to Sonic Frontiers. Animations across the board are much better, the character models are presented much more nicely, the lighting looks a lot better. Like, the camera, or I guess, digital camera, is making love to this game throughout that entire trailer. We also see this big Doom's Eye device grant Shadow his abilities, so we'll go into that next. Okay, so Shadow's abilities do look pretty game-changing. However, we do see that item capsules are returning dotted around the stages, so my immediate bet is that these will be like an evolution of the Wisps, and I do suspect that some of these are using some of the coding from the Wisps. So the first up is an upgraded version of Shadow's Chaos Spear. We've got the Doom Spears that can target a lot more enemies, starting small, but it seems to complement the flow state a little more than just the regular Shadow Spears. We've got Doom Blast, which looks to be a little like the bullet power-up from Sonic Superstars, where Shadow is suspended in the air while you choose a target and deal some serious damage. And what's cool is how you can knock enemies into one another or throw them at parts of the scenery to reveal hidden areas. This feels like a really good evolution of the Sonic Frontiers combat system, with us now being able to throw enemies into each other. Then we have Doom Morph, which is where I suspect we've got a little reusage of the Wisps going on here. It looks a lot like a cross between the Frenzy Wisp and the Spike Wisp, with how it can glide across even vertical terrains, but it's also got kind of a swinging mechanic as well that looks quite similar to the grapple device that the Avatar held in Sonic Forces. Meanwhile, the character model looks as if the average 2010 Sonic final boss decided to stick with the Eldritch horror theme. I can't put my finger on it, it just kind of looks like the Egg Wisp, the Death Egg robot from Sonic Forces, and Black Doom all had a baby together. Then there's the Doom Wings, which were revealed a little while ago. It was the first of these new power-ups to be revealed in one of the earlier trailers. And that gives Shadow these massive symbiote wings. And we finally actually get to see them in gameplay here, as they open up different paths in the sky with different rewards. Probably a means of skipping over a lot of platforming. I suspect that this one is going to be very similar to the Eagle Wisp from Sonic Lost World, probably carrying a lot of code over from that. And then there's Doom Surf, which looks to be replacing the water running ability that was a staple of Sonic gameplay up until Sonic Lost World, but it's worth the trade-off to see Shadow surfing on an alien. And that's how you get around those water sections in the open zone, and I'm sure that will get used to some extent in the individual levels themselves. Now, a key difference between Shadow's power-ups here and the Wisps is how they interact with Shadow's existing moveset. He can still boost and do other Shadow things while he's using these, unlike the Wisps, which completely change the player controller. I suspect that the majority of these power-ups will be retrieved from item capsules and then activated like you would with the Wisps with a button prompt. While abilities like the Doom Spear and Doom Blast, I'd imagine they could maybe be charged a bit like the Phantom Rush from Sonic Frontiers. Or maybe they too will be in item capsules, but it's gotta be said, I am happy to see item capsules returning. There's always just such a joy to discovering something in there that more recent Sonic titles have been kind of missing. So Shadow's moveset has been drastically enhanced, and we can see that these are given to him by Black Doom, which is awesome, which is cool. This also means that there's going to be a very clear separation between Sonic's gameplay in the Sonic Generations portion and Shadow's gameplay here. We're doing a lot more with Shadow, comparatively. And we're also seeing that Shadow's combat capabilities aren't exclusive to the open world like what we had with Sonic Frontiers, but they are also present in action stages, which is something I was asking for back with Sonic Frontiers. Kind of an acceptance of these new moves as part of all Sonic gameplay, including linear gameplay as well, so I'm glad to see that here, and what this can do for the rhythm of the average Sonic action stage. Alright, let's talk about locations next. So, we already know that the Space Colony Arc, Radical Highway, Bullet Station, and Kingdom Valley are all represented in Shadow Generations, with Radical Highway being more of a set piece at the end of the Space Colony Arc stage. That's the stuff we'd already seen up until now. This trailer dropped some truly game-changing new locations. So it looks like Radical Highway is going to get its own devoted acts, as we do see some daytime stages devoted to this environment. We do also see some 2D gameplay aboard the Space Colony Arc. My prediction is that the Act 1s will be fully 3D and the Act 2s will be 2D. I will get my personal bias out there, and I think I mention this every time, but for those of you who are new here, I really hope that the next game will be done with 2D gameplay in 3D games. Sega and franchise leader Takashi Iizuka have been pretty vocal about understanding that different Sonic fans of different generations and sensibilities have different expectations for this franchise, and so Sonic Team want to cater different games to those different fans. So we can have fully 2D Sonic titles like Sonic Mania and Sonic Superstars, as well as 3D ones. I just don't understand why the 3D side of the fanbase have to still put up with 2D gameplay as well. I don't hate 2D gameplay, I love me some classic Sonic games, but I just want to see Sonic Team commit to a fully 3D platformer, and I don't understand why that would be too much to ask, especially with Shadow. Side-scrolling gameplay means nothing to this character, especially if there's no classic Shadow in this game. And I'm just gonna straight up say a classic Shadow is possible. But no, he was in the Arc, it wouldn't make any sense. It's a time travel story with a villain that's messing around with time. What if Black Doom went out and released Shadow from the capsule early, changing the course of history? The Shadow he let out wasn't fully developed yet, so he's a classic Shadow. And then classic Shadow and modern Shadow have to work together to restore the timeline. You could even have it so that in Black Doom's new timeline, Maria survives, giving Shadow kind of a reason to want to hold on to this new timeline, but he knows the right thing to do is set things right. Maybe there were other repercussions to that. Oh, fuck me, the story's never gonna live up to what I just put in my own head now. Anyway, moving on. We get 3 locations in this trailer that we haven't yet seen for Shadow Generations. Now, some suspected that this area may be Dusty Desert, but I've deduced that these industrial-looking areas here are all the same stage, and that this is Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces. The architecture here is pretty similar to that of the Red Gate Bridge, and it looks like we're exploring more kind of the underground of that city, which is cool. We get to explore a new area of an existing level. We're also seeing Sonic Forces enemies populating this area, so it all adds up, it all makes sense. Now, it does make me really happy to see some Sonic Forces rep here. We know that Shadow Generation stages are a lot less narrow and railroaded than the ones in Sonic Forces, and that they're quite a bit more substantial. So to get to actually spend some real time playing around in a Sonic Forces location feels like making up for lost time. But then here's the real blockbuster, the real game changer. Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers. Yeah, I know, right? Chaos Island has been turned into an action stage, and it looks so much better already. Once again, rather than just being a terrain floor, with homogenized metal floating platforms populating the sky, we actually have platforming that is in theme and looks diegetic with the architecture of the location. Hell yes, and oh my god, it is so cool to see Sonic Frontiers getting rep here. And an inspired choice to use Chaos Island for this as well, rather than Kronos or Oranos Island, which are arguably a bit more iconic to Sonic Frontiers. But we've also got these purple Ivan Ooze terrains that Shadow requires the Doom Morph to traverse. I did say a while back that it would be awesome if we could see Sonic Frontiers open zones transformed into action stages for this, and to see that's actually come to be is fucking awesome. It also shows that Sonic Team are really thinking outside the box here. But it also means that anything is possible for this title now, as we're now exploring zones that Shadow hasn't been to before. At least that we know of. Maybe he was here behind the scenes and we didn't know. What discoveries await us? There is one more location to mention, but I'm going to save that for the next segment, which is on boss fights, because in terms of boss fights, we've already extensively seen the battle with the Bio-Lizard, and it looks awesome. Very faithful to the original, but with some new phases. And we're seeing some more Frontiers combat sensibilities in there as well. We're seeing how Shadow can use his Chaos Control against the Bio-Lizard, and it's all very promising. Well, in this trailer, we get a look at another boss fight. We've got a fairly dinky version of Metal Overlord battling out with Shadow in Welcome Back Chemical Plant for the 8th time now. This battle looks to be predominantly water-based. Now, I did mention that, yeah, this is in the chemical plant, which means we are seeing characters getting displaced, which makes sense, as we also see a lot of the Black Arms populating non-Shadow 05 stages. I'm also noticing the water tornadoes in this city stage. So is Chaos around here somewhere? Now this does lead me to wonder, what other boss fights could we see? We'll definitely be fighting Black Doom at some stage, surely. Undoubtedly. And of course, we know we've got the Biolizard and Metal Overlord, who is looking fresh, by the way. What a deep cut. It's really cool that in Sonic Generations we got to fight Metal Sonic, but for Shadow Generations we get Metal Overlord. Awesome. Just awesome. But surely Mephiles the Dark is in here somewhere, right? We're seeing his purple Ivan ooze that he coated the dusty desert in. I know he's hiding somewhere. He must be here. Dude, if he's not in here, I'm gonna be so pissed off. That would be such a huge missed opportunity. He's literally one of the most highly requested enemies to return. Come on, Sonic Team. I know he's hiding somewhere. Don't reveal it until the game is out, though. That would be awesome. Also, given that there's some Sonic Forces rep, perhaps we can actually fight one of the Death Egg Sentinels, or better yet, a rematch with Infinite. Maybe get a chance to see him characterized well this time. And what's the boss-to-stage ratio going to be like? Will it be like Sonic Generations, where you get 2 bosses per era? Are there even going to be era distinctions this time? Either way, Shadow Generations really does give Sonic Team a chance to display a lot of rather unflattering Sonic history in a much more flattering light, and I think we're definitely seeing that here. It's kind of like Sonic Generations was all the stuff that they were proud of, and Shadow Generations is the stuff they want to give a second whirl. And I think that's pretty cool. The music as well, we've got a good listen to the new Biolizard theme, which sounds awesome. I love how they've incorporated the Live and Learn riff, which is something the original Generations remix by Richard Jacques did that I loved. See? I credited you. No need to get your panties in a bunch, Mr. Jacques. So that's it for the most recent trailer, and I am positively hyped as all hell, man. Jesus Christ. This is a dream come true. This feels like not just a Sonic Generations expansion, which was something we dearly needed back in 2011, but like the culmination of everything Sonic has achieved since Sonic Generations, which, admittedly didn't always make itself obvious, but yeah, this is the kind of treatment that Shadow deserves. Now, before we wrap things up, I do want to talk about a little quote that's been doing the rounds on Twitter about reworked cutscenes. There was a recent press release for Sonic X Shadow Generations that mentioned that the Sonic Generations portion will feature reworked cutscenes. And I am wondering what they mean by reworked here. I mean, I think everyone's wondering what they mean by reworked here, because we have seen glimpses at cutscenes in Sonic Generations. For this new version of the game, we've seen a picture of the opening cutscene now with Chao populating Sonic's birthday party. And we did see an image that appears to be a different camera angle of another Sonic Generations cutscene. So it makes me wonder, are these just going to be things like camera angle changes, maybe some slightly enhanced animations? Or are they maybe actually kind of going there and giving this game a bit more of the story exploration that it deserved the first time? See, in a vacuum, Sonic Generations' story was one of those stories that's very much built around being a video game, rather than the typical Sonic blockbuster fare. Sonic gets sucked into a white void, one by one rounds up all his friends, and fights Dr. Robotnik. And it's far from the worst story of its era. It's definitely a lot less insufferable than, say, Sonic Colors or Sonic Lost World, but at the same time, my god, was there so much missed potential. We had a game here where we went to places like Spagonia, Station Square, and not once did we get a mention of Chip or Tikal the Echidna or just anything along those lines. We had a time travel story that didn't really ever once explore the time travel aspect. Sonic and friends had absolutely zero emotional connection to anywhere they were traveling through. So that is a huge missed opportunity that it would be awesome if they would actually capitalize on. But I think we might be expecting a little too much there, because I feel like they're quite committed to retaining the integrity of the original Sonic Generations experience. So I don't know how far they'd go with anything that's transformative. This is more about taking a great game and adding a little more onto it. So I suspect those reworked cutscenes will just be very minor tweaks. But it's not like they're not addressing my issues with Sonic Generations' story already, in that Shadow Generations is the events of Sonic Generations just told through Shadow's perspective. This is what he was experiencing at that time. This story is going to be penned by Ian Flynn, so I have no doubt that it's going to be a bit more explorative of Shadow's history in a narrative sense. Which I guess also makes sense, as Sonic is kind of all about moving forward. I do still think he probably would get a little sentimental from time to time. I know he's a happy-go-lucky dude, but if Chip, who became his BFF, just fucking died and he never thinks about it, that's honestly super unhealthy. What do you want, pup? Some super melodramatic story where they all evaluate their life's decisions and they talk about ML and how that really impacted all of them? Yeah, I fucking want that. I would love that, dude. Like, inject that into my veins right now. Give me a Sonic Battle story sequel that explores the grief that Sonic and friends felt when their adopted son fucking died. He was like a brother to Shadow. I want to see Shadow explore that. I think ML is already being represented in the story prologue, so I don't think he's going to be in this. But dude, a pup can dream, right? God, I'm doing awful things for expectations of this game, aren't I? It sure as hell ain't going to go that deep. I wish I could expect it to go that deep, but that's just not... It's just not that kind of franchise. I'm going to meet Shadow Generations on its own terms, whatever it says. But I think what they're kind of doing here is genius, because when I first heard that there was like a Sonic Generations remaster in the works, my immediate assumption was, okay, they'll pretty it up, they'll make it look a little glossier than before. Really, they've done pretty much dick all to the visuals. Instead asking the question, what if Sonic Generations had the hero and dark story structure of Sonic Adventure 2? And it's like, ooh, don't tickle me like that, and they're doing it, they're going there. And my biggest complaints levied at the original Sonic Generations when it came out were that they did nothing with the story, the game was a little on the short side, and I thought the hub world was pretty uninspired. So it's like, okay, the original game is as is, but they've now released a version with another story where they will explore the story a little bit more. It's gonna almost double the length of the original game, and the hub world looks sick. It's like they're saying, okay, we're gonna take Sonic Generations and make it the Sonic game you've been asking for a while. We're just operating on that foundation. And Sonic Generations was already a really good foundation for that. Alright, before we wrap up, let's talk about the special edition from Limited Run, because, oh god, I hate the way this thing makes me feel, man. I'm looking at it and my mouth is just watering, it looks so cool. You get a copy of the game on whatever your console of choice. It comes in a fuck-off massive collector's box. You get a statue of Sonic and Shadow stood atop a Sega Dreamcast, which is just awesome. You get a steelbook, but you also get a commemorative Dreamcast jewel case. Figurines of the different Chow, key rings of Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and Shadow's shoes, an art book, and the official soundtrack on disc, all topped off with a certificate of authenticity. What an incredible bundle! How much is it? $250 plus VAT and import fees. Yeah, nah, man, no. Yeah, that's not happening. We don't even know if you get any of the digital deluxe bonuses in there, or if you get the Sonic Dreamcast skin or anything like that. The big enticing thing here is the statue, because here's the thing. The art book, you get a digital version with it if you get digital deluxe. The commemorative jewel case and the steelbook, you're either going to use one or the other. You're probably not going to use both. The soundtrack, you can listen to it all on YouTube. I've never really put a soundtrack disc into a device before to listen to it. I just download everything now. And I kind of hate that, because I do love physical media, but like when it comes to music and stuff, that doesn't really appeal to me massively. Chow figurines are nice, but you can get virtually the same thing from Jakks Pacific for like $3. The Sonic, Shadow, and Classic Sonic shoe keychains, I can give or take them, but also you could just pull one off of a Jakks Pacific figure and put a keychain through it. And as for the statue, it is beautiful. It really is. But at the same time, you could buy a 4-parts broken Dreamcast and stick a Jakks Pacific Sonic and Shadow on top of it. Paint them up all nice and pretty as well to make them look just that little bit more primo. You could make yourself a really nice display piece. I'm saying this because I'm coping with the fact that I'm never going to get this. It's super expensive. It's going to total about £300 to get to the UK. Heck, I think you can buy a working Dreamcast cheaper. And then, of course, the estimated shipping date is July 2025. I can't, man. Can't happen. Sorry, I can't. I want it. It can't happen. That's just how that is. That wraps up the news roundup for now. What do you guys think? Comment below, discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below is the link to my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name in the credits of these videos, as well as my appreciation, and other stuff too. A special shout out goes to the patrons in the $5 and above tiers. We have Choi Henshin, KB, RT0, Cal-X, Hypes, Sad Goku, Daredenny, SSS06, Cale Bennett, Ken K. Good news, everyone! They found helium in the Iron Range. Your long search is over. Cirrus the Skeptic, Biotin. Oh no, I've used up all of the helium. What am I meant to do now? And Vera Wild. Thank you, good folks, so much for your generosity, and to all of you at home, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Now get out of here.